Today I'm going to go over the basics of batch programming. Batch programming is basically creating a simple text file and then having those commands you put into the text file executed by the command line interpreter or shell of the operating system one after the other. This is why it's also sometimes called shell scripting, because you're basically writing very simple script in a text file that the shell of the computer, basically the command interpreter, executes one after the other. It's a little different than other programming languages, which basically get compiled. So in other computer programming languages, you write a text file and it gets compiled into machine language and then executed. This is basically creating a text file, and then those text commands are sent to the command line interpreter, and in real time those commands are executed. There's advantages and disadvantages to doing it one way or the other. One of the biggest advantages of shell scripting is it's backwards and forwards compatible with any version of Windows. Since we're doing this all with DOS commands, it could go back to the 80s theoretically, and a new computer out of the box this program would also work on. Another advantage is you don't really need to install anything to get started programming. All you need is a simple text editor like Notepad on any Windows machine, and the command line interpreter or shell itself. There's three that have come out with Windows over the years: Command.com, CMD, .exe, and the new PowerShell. We're going to be using CMD, the one in the middle, but it's backwards and forwards compatible with anything, especially how simple this program is going to be. So let's get our programs open. So all we need is Notepad, and I'm going to use this little trick to make it show up on the left. Now you could start CMD just by coming down here and typing CMD or looking for it in all programs. I'm going to show you a neat trick here. You can go to whatever folder you want to start it in and then type in CMD, and now it starts in that folder. That's a nice shortcut to know about. So we're going to create a folder to work in. So the command for that is mkdir, make directory, and we're going to call it, let's say, CMD, because that's going to be the name of the extension we give to a text file to let the shell know that this is a batch file that needs to be, the commands in it need to be executed over and over. So now that we made that directory, we're going to go ahead and change to that directory. So CD is to change directory, CMD, so now we're in that directory. It shows you there that we've changed directories. And now you can actually open a directory just like you started the CMD from a folder. You can use CMD to open a folder with start dot. Dot just means the current directory you're in. So let's get started in Notepad, creating our file. The first command that goes into almost any batch file in Windows is this echo off command. The @ here tells the shell to basically not show this part because it's just kind of distracting and unnecessary, and then the echo off says to do this for all commands. So every command that now gets executed from this point on will not show up, at least the part where you enter the command, because it just looks kind of funny and it's distracting. So what we're going to do to make this network tool is we're going to ping several different things on our network and the internet, and this is going to tell you a lot about where any potential issues might be. So the first thing we want to ping is the computer we're on itself. That's going to tell you basically if the network driver is working fine, the network card's working fine, and the computer is getting and holding an IP address. On my system, I set a static IP. You don't need to know too much about this stuff for the purposes of this tutorial, but it's usually a good idea to have a static IP. So we're going to find out what our current IP address is. You can see it right here. IPv4 address for the local area connection is right here, 192.168.1.71. So that's the first thing we want to test. And this is honestly what you would do if you had networking issues. You'd want to send out a series of pings to figure out if there's communication. In this case, this first ping just lets us know if our computer can communicate with itself, if it has an IP address and everything's working okay. The next thing we want to ping to establish the two-way communication is functioning is the router. Usually it's a wireless router, but in order to find that address, you just look at here, the default gateway. In this case, it's 192.168.1.1. So we're going to send out a ping there. The next thing we want to ping is just some IP address on the internet, just to see if we can get out to the internet at all. I happen to know one that's always on the internet is this 8.8.8.8. This is Google's DNS server, and it's always up. DNS is basically a way of converting names into numbers. So when you go and type in google.com into a web browser, the first thing that needs to happen is the computer needs to know what number to go to. Since computers only understand numbers, they don't understand words or strings, it needs to be converted first. So that's what DNS is, and that's why we ping the number first, and then we ping a name. So if the number works and the name doesn't, we know there's a DNS issue. If this works and this doesn't, then we know that there's a problem communicating with the internet. So that we're getting to if this works, we know we're hitting the router, but maybe the modem is off, or maybe your ISP is experiencing some kind of issue. And finally, if this works right here, so if the gateway works and the gateway doesn't work and the computer works, you know the computer's probably having an issue talking to the router. Maybe wireless is down or something like that. Now, in reality, if the wireless were down, you probably wouldn't get this IP address either, because most wireless routers hand out the IP address. But in my case, like I said, it's a static IP, so that wouldn't be the case for me. So if you want to get a little more into that, research it yourself. But these 4 pings honestly tell you a tremendous amount about where the issue is on your network, on your issue getting out to the internet. So what you'd normally have to do is come in here and ping each one of these, and you might have to look up the numbers to ping because you forgot them. By creating this program, we can basically just do all 4 commands one after the other, and we don't have to look anything up. So here's what it would just look like, doing a normal ping, so we know we can actually reach the internet here. So now that we've created our little program, we need to save it, and this is the important part. So we want to do save as, and we need to make sure we give it a certain extension. This is again what tells the computer, or tells the shell, to not look at it as a text file, but look at it as a batch file, something that has a series of commands to execute. So we're going to call this mping, because we're going to be typing it out. We don't want to make it too long and cumbersome. So mping for multi-ping, and then we want to call it cmd. Cmd, you could do BAT for BAT for batch, but CMD is more universal and it'll work with most things. If we wanted it to work with, say, Windows 98, 95, or even before that, we could call it BAT. But CMD will be sufficient, and we're going to be saving it in this CMD folder. So now that we saved it, we can do a dir. This basically shows us what's in there, and we see there's our mping.cmd. So let's test it out real quick. mping.cmd, that's how we execute the command now. And if it worked, all 4 of these pings should go off. And it looks like that's exactly what's happening. Now again, if one of them failed, the next ones obviously wouldn't work. So if the gateway failed, then the next pings would stop working. You can hit Control C to end a ping or end a process in CMD. But now, say we don't want to always have to come into the folder to execute our mping command. We want to execute mping from anywhere. So for example, if I cd ... that means the parent directory. Now I'm just in this folder. Now if I try to type mping.cmd, it doesn't know what I'm talking about because I'm not in that folder anymore. We want mping to be just as universal as ping, right? Ping will work anywhere from any spot on the command line because it's in what's known as the path. If you type path, these are all the folders on the computer where you can put a executable program or batch file, and it'll just know that this is a place to execute programs from. So I'm going to show you how to update the path. Let's go ahead and go back into our CMD folder and bring it up. And let's grab the location here. We're going to copy it. Now you could use the path command, but I'm just going to show you on the computer where you can put, where you can change this environmental variable. You want to go to the system properties, and then here's environmental variables, and then here's the path, and we can edit it. And you'll notice in here everything ends with a semicolon, so we'll come to the end, put in a semicolon, and then paste that location. So now everything in CUsers mat CMD is going to be something that we can execute. So whenever you create a finished batch program or shell script, you can basically put it there, and then you can execute it from any spot on the command line. You need to click OK and OK again for those changes to save. Now if we type path, let's see if it's in there. It doesn't look like it's updated yet, so we need to reopen this CMD. Now let's see if our path has been updated, and there it is, CUsers mat CMD. Now I could be anywhere, say just in the root of the drive, and try our mping command, and there it goes. It'll ping all 4 of those IP addresses again. And now you have that tool that you can always use whenever you want, and it'll, if you have an internet issue, it's really one of the first things you want to do. So I hope you got something out of that. On the next lesson, I'll show you a few more advanced things, but for now, thanks for watching.